Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Great Day Houston. It's the weekend, and the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo is in full swing. Great Days Carlos Hernandez will meet up and eat up with the oldest barbecue vendor at the rodeo. Bun B's Birthday Bonanza is on the main stage tonight with Keith Sweat, Yolanda Adams, and a whole lot more. That concert is sold out. You still have time, though, to get tickets to see our first guest this morning, Grammy nominee Charley Crockett. Even after his mom lost her job, she somehow rustled up a pawn shop guitar for her son. That guitar, plus an amazing voice, helped Charley survive living on the street singing for his dinner. You'll hear the lyrics to his life on March 17th at the rodeo. But first, let's meet this country blues Americana crooner.
I can't get your sister to fly. Your check ain't ever coming in. I've always loved the game I can't win. Welcome to hard times and feeling low. Do you like sinning? No. Where you will be before you go.
Charley, you have already lived 100 lifetimes and you have a lot more to go. Your quote is, "My only plan ever has been two different things. How do I move to a better spot, and how do I get my music in every person's hand who's willing to take it? If anything got in your way, you weren't afraid to go over, under, or around it." And a lot of that, I think, came from your childhood. You just had to learn how to adjust. Born in San Benito, Texas, you lived in a single wide trailer in Port Isabel with your parents, your grandmother, half-brother, and half-sister. What were some of your earliest memories of life?
Well, yeah, I'm from the Rio Grande Valley, and that's an agricultural community, 95% Latino, sugar cane, grapefruit, black alligators. That's what I remember.
All right, and you grew up in a household where music was all around. You have such great musical influences. Billie Holiday, Carole King, Harry Connick Jr., Waylon Jennings. It goes on and on and on. Bob Dylan. It's such a wide range, which is reflected in your style today, because your style can move on a dime. But you stayed with your uncle in the French Quarter in New Orleans, and that broadened your style of music, if you will, and your exposure to music.
Yeah, my uncle worked in the French Quarter, lived and worked in the French Quarter, and my cousin and I spent our summers with him for quite a while. And we would kind of run wild in the quarter, and you'd see all the different street performers, funeral processions, the brass bands. And when people call me a stylistic chameleon, I blame it all on Louisiana.
All right, I'm sure they will gladly take that. Your mom did something when you were around 17 that was so sweet and pivotal. She got you a guitar from the pawn shop, even though she had lost her job.
Yeah, she did. You know, when I was a little younger, she had tried to get me on the piano, and I just couldn't focus. I always had a hard time, you know, focusing in school and kind of with authority in general. Anybody kind of trying to tell me what to do, I wasn't too good with it. But about the time I was turning 17, we were really struggling. I was getting in a lot of trouble, and the timing was just right. You know, she never said anything, really. She just gave me that guitar, and, you know, I remember I was banging on that thing, you know, kind of pouring all my emotions into it. And I said, "Mama, am I any good?" And she said, she thought about it for a second. She said, "Well, son, when you sing, people believe you."
Yeah, right. Okay, but you know, but what you also realize is that you got that kind of those God winks that told you to keep on going, because you realized that people would empty their pockets for your songs. You mentioned seeing the street performers when you were in New Orleans. That would soon be what you were doing. You in the Dallas, French Quarter, California. You hitchhiked to New York City. No money or no real place to stay, but you were busking on the streets doing your craft.
Yeah, when we were squatting in these old warehouses in Brooklyn, and I was working on subway cars with a lot of young teenage spoken word poets who were a lot of the best rappers that I'd ever been around, there was one of them who painted this mural on the wall in this warehouse we were staying in. It was advice he was given by a mentor of his in Harlem, who said, "From the gifted, much is expected." And I've kind of lived by that idea, you know, for a long time now. And I think it's not, I believe everybody's gifted, you know, but what it is, you know, you have to believe that, and you got to keep putting it forward.
Yeah, you know, for those of us from the outside looking in at just kind of some of the things that you went through, we think, gosh, what a hard life. Do you look back at that as hard life, or real life that basically provides the lyrics for the rest of what you do?
I think it's real life, and I'm an entertainer, I get paid to entertain and write songs, and I appreciate you saying that, because my experience is, I've gone through a lot in my life, but when I look around and I listen to the people in a great and varied land, there are a lot of folks going through what I went through and then some, and that it always makes me realize you don't know what people are going through necessarily when they're coming to your shows or you're shaking their hand on a street corner, and I don't, I try not to take people for granted.
I'll explain, it means that you're the fairest in the land.
You connected with other musicians in New York City, and you made a band called the Train Robbers, and so you're performing there, but then there's a point where you get noticed by a Sony music executive. They saw you on the R Train. Is that the moment where you thought, okay, have I hit it big?
Well, we were living hand in mouth, and we were all young men. We didn't think of it as a band. It was really a kind of loose collective of street people that kind of came together to, I don't want to use the word survive, but make it work, because we were panhandling on subway cars, and so it was more of a loose collective, but we were winning over.
It was a community. I mean, you basically formed a community.
Yeah, and there were a lot of people coming and going, but when they did discover us there on that R Train, there were 6 of us that got signed into that deal, and I guess for a minute I thought that we'd hit it big. Music business people in that environment kind of come at you saying, this is your one opportunity in your life. This is your one golden opportunity. And, I believe that for a quick minute, but it's a classic story of it falling apart very quickly, when they know you're believable, they see you as believable, but they're just kind of plugging you into a kind of a system that they already had in place.
Well, one of the things they wanted to do was change your style, and changing a style would be changing you.
I've been eating off that plate for a long time, and that's kind of why I started recording myself. I was mad at those folks back then, but, it's more like, the less you know about what you're trying to sell, the more somebody else is going to have to figure out how to sell it for you. I think it was a wake-up call for me that I didn't want to be stuck in a 6-person group. I was reduced to, 1 vote out of 6 guys, and the manager is really in control, and then you've got the label and the publisher and all of them. And if you don't know what your sound is, if you don't know where you're headed, if you don't know anything about your style, what happens if you change producers? What happens if you change labels? Yeah. It wasn't what I expected, but it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me in the way that it galvanized my focus. From there I realized, okay, there's another way to do it. That's my way.
I'm a $10 cowboy. I play a little guitar. People always ask me if I'm a rodeo star.
You were Grammy-nominated this year for $10 Cowboy Best Americana Album. That had to feel good.
I'll tell you what, it came as a surprise. I wasn't thinking about it. A friend of mine that was my manager for a while, Bruce Robinson, lives out here in the Hill Country. I made a record with him called The Man from Waco. He told me, he said, man, one day when they come calling for you, it's going to be out of left field. You're going to be scratching your head, And that was true. So it feels good to get recognized, That can be pretty weary and antisocial when it comes to kind of, those kind of ballroom scenes or whatever, but it really felt good to be recognized. And also I think that, there's a lot of people in the mainstream that have maybe made it more, my music more accessible, whether it's, Beyonce or Post Malone and those kind of folks, and I know they can be polarizing depending on the audience, but for me, those folks have broadened the interest in what we do. So it's an interesting time, for those folks who, don the cowboy hat.
Yeah. And social media has also widened that, where people used to have to stay in a lane, and social media, if you could post on there, said you could stay in whatever lane you want to be in, or no lane at all. Your new album is Lonesome Drifter, and so that's out March 14th of this year, and your first single, Lonesome Drifter, will be on there as well. You're heading to Rodeo Houston. What do you have to say to the folks who will be at that concert?
My show will be worth the price of admission and then some, money back guarantee.
I don't think anybody is standing in line to get their money back. Charley, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for being so real.
No, it's awesome. My wife was born in Houston. It's one of my favorite places to play. Thank y'all for having me. It's a real honor.
Don't say that, because when you get here, everybody's going to be standing in line for the concert saying, his wife and I are best friends. We grew up together. Yeah, could I get a free ticket? Yeah. All right. Thanks, Charley. Safe travels.
Thank y'all.
If you're a $10 cowboy.
I am now a Crockett myself. Again, Charley Crockett will perform on the main stage at Rodeo Houston Monday, March 17th. There are still some tickets left. For a full list of performances and attractions, just go to RodeoHouston.com.